Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Dribble Drive podcast. I am your host, Austin Render. It is episode 25, a week 2 recap, a week 3 preview. We've got a lot to get to here today. The voice of the Penn State Lady Lions, Joe Putnam, is going to join us here later on in the show as we talk about their 5-0 start and the offensive explosion that they've been up to. We'll give you our players of the week, freshman, team, game of the week. And then we've got a little segment we're going to play where we're going to look at some of the best teams around the Big Ten and try and decipher who's the best player on some of these really good teams because they are very balanced. So we're going to talk a little bit about most important versus best and all that stuff. And then a detailed preview into a awesome slate of week 3 games around Big Ten women's basketball. But as always, if you are watching us right now live on the YouTube channel, the Back Home Network YouTube channel, thanks for joining us. You can also catch us in podcast form on Apple and Spotify. If you're listening to us in that form, we're going to try and do as many of these live shows at noon on Tuesday. Is going to be our release date each week throughout the season. In fact, next Tuesday, we'll be bringing it to you live from the Bahamas as I'll be down there with the Indiana women's and men's teams next Tuesday. So we'll be down there doing the show live. Maybe I should set up at the beach or get cozy, something like that. I'll try to get a good view out the window of my hotel room. But either way, we'll be there Tuesday at noon next week as we continue to do this each week. Give us a follow, subscribe, a rating, download our episodes. All that stuff helps us. Tell a friend as well as we continue to try and grow the product here into the basketball season. Well, let's take a look at what's going on this week in Big Ten women's basketball. And as we start, if you're watching us live, you're going to see the ticker at the bottom. We'll get all the scores since Wednesday through yesterday's action throughout the Big Ten. Let's start with the game of the week, though, which in my opinion was on Sunday. A terrific basketball game between number 12, Ohio State, and Belmont. The Buckeyes come out on top 67-63. Ohio State gets its first test of the season. They passed, and you're going to look at the score, you're going to say, well, the ranked team should have won by more than that. But Belmont's always a good team, and they got great production out of Cody McMahon, 21 points, 3 others in double figures. They were down 3 heading into the fourth quarter. Go ahead and win the fourth quarter, 20-13. And Jelani Cambridge growing up before our eyes, we saw her put up over 30 in her opener. How about this one? 10 points and 6 assists, but hit an and one with 13 seconds left to grab the lead, knock down 2 more free throws late to ice it. And that's how Ohio State ultimately gets the win over Belmont. This Ohio State team, who we will talk about here later on as to who their best player is, you wondered, and that's kind of the big question about the segment we'll do later, is like, who is the person when you need to get a bucket that you're going to give the ball to? And for Ohio State, you kind of like, okay, it could be Cody McMahon, could be Chance Gray, could be Jelani Cambridge. Cambridge was the one that took it and made the shot and made the free throws late that gets Ohio State the win in their first real test of the season. Of course, Ohio State will still have plenty of tests coming up later on in the season, but they will be on the road tomorrow at Ohio. Not that should be all that much of a test for the Buckeyes, but it's good to see them getting tested here early. Again, a very impressive performance by Ohio State in a nice road victory over a very good Belmont squad. That was the game of the week. How about the team of the week? Well, that goes to the Penn State Nittany Lions. They take the win, a couple of wins this week in dominant fashion over both Niagara and Monmouth. Now, Penn State has not played the strongest schedule by any means, but it's still been impressive what they are doing. They averaged over 100 points a game in their 2 games this week. Mariah Murray, Gracie Merkel have been great. Some freshmen are coming on. Role players are establishing themselves. And that's what you got to do early in the season is you try to replace as much as Penn State's trying to replace on its roster from the turnover. You got to kind of play these easier games and figure out what you have. And Penn State's been very good here so far. They're going to be tested this week with Marshall and Georgia, but this Penn State team, the team of the week, because they are putting on an offensive clinic at the moment as they improve to 5-0 on the season. And speaking of the Penn State Nittany Lions, let's bring in the voice of this year's Penn State women's basketball squad, Joe Putnam, joining us on the show. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Doing well, Austin. Doing well. Things are very happy here in Happy Valley right now. The Lady Lions off to a rousing 5-0 start in high scoring fashion.
Yeah, they are our team of the week here on the Dribble Drive because of what they've been able to do here through the first couple of games. Back to back 100-point performances this week. They average 100.5 points a game, which I believe last time I checked is pretty good for what has been going on in college basketball. Really good stuff for Pitt State so far. Let's talk about that offense, Joe. What's impressed you the most about the way Caroline Keeger has this team going?
Well, really, the key to the whole thing is the fact that these Lady Lions are sharing the basketball. They have at least 20 assists in every game this season. Actually, against the most recent game against Monmouth, it was a season low in assists. But definitely, the basketball is not sticking, and it's a variety of different scorers. Mariah Murray came up with another 20-point effort. Last time out, she's averaging about 20 points per game. But then you have Gracie Merkel has made a huge difference in the middle. She was on the Big Ten honor roll this past week, putting up 24 points, 7 boards in the 101-point game against Niagara, and then following it up with another 20-point double-double against Monmouth on Sunday. So she's definitely made a difference inside. She's the tallest player in Penn State history, listed at 6'5", but she has great vision out of the post. She can kick it back out, but she's also tenacious, and her offensive rebounding in particular has been superb. Penn State's averaging over 14 offensive rebounds per game.
That's big, and I didn't realize she's the tallest player ever at Penn State. How about that? This is Joe Putnam dropping nuggets for us already right off the top here. Let's talk Gracie Merkel and what she has added to this team, because I think we talked about it when you came on in the preseason about how they needed that solid big in the middle, and she has really provided that. Kind of talk about her game and what she's unlocked for this offense.
Well, Gracie Merkel was the nation's field goal percentage leader at over 70% 2 years ago at Bellarmine. She actually took a medical red shirt last year, was dealing with injuries, the lower body, but came to Penn State, and it was, right from the get-go, you could tell that she was getting right back into it. It was hard to believe it had been over a year since she had played in a competitive game when the Lady Lions opened the season against Bucknell. But she has been superb. Again, her offensive rebounding is terrific. She's also one of those post players, and Austin, you and I have seen a lot of great post players in the Big Ten. And I think the thing they all have in common is when they get the ball in the post, they know exactly what they're going to do with it. Yep. They know where they're going to go, and they're going to be very economical in doing so. And Gracie Merkel has those sorts of moves. It's very reminiscent of a Mackenzie Holmes, of a Megan Gustafson, a Monica Sonano, I think. So far, the first 5 games, Penn State, probably Duquesne has been the toughest opponent so far. But now the Lady Lions are headed down to Disney here, the ESPN Wide World of Sports, taking on Marshall and Georgia. So definitely a step up in competition for sure. And I think Gracie Merkel, from what she's shown in the first 5 games, will continue her form down there in Orlando.
It's so true, because when a post gets the ball and you see them kind of looking around trying to figure out, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing? And all of a sudden they get called for a 3-second, or maybe they travel, or they turn the ball over. Those quick, it's all about quick decisions, because doubles are going to come, especially as Gracie Merkel continues to do what she's doing. The reason doubles may not come is the way Mariah Murray is shooting the basketball right now. I think, I don't know off the top of my head what the statistics say, but maybe the best 3-point shooter in the Big Ten right now, Mariah Murray. Every time I pull up a box score, she's got 5 to 7 3-point makes. Was this something that they kind of saw as a potential for her here this season?
Absolutely. Carolyn Keeger has said that there's no way if Mariah Murray gets an open look, she can't make a 3-point shot. She's got 26 triples through the first 5 games so far, near the top of the country in that category, and she's near 50% from beyond the arc. And the thing about Mariah is she has that quick trigger on that 3-point shot. She can catch and shoot right away. It's almost a split second between the catch and the shoot. And she can also kind of work for her own shot as well because of that quick release. But what Mariah's really improved at, too, is not just the 3-point shot, which coming out of Dunmore, PA, we knew she was going to bring to the table. But she's really added on and become a very well-rounded player as well. And she is logging a lot of minutes so far. 29 minutes in the early going she's averaging over the first 5 games. in the grand scheme of things, not too much, but Penn State's been able to work a lot of different players in over these last 2 triple-digit outings. So most definitely getting a lot of work because of her play on both sides, but that three-point shot is one of the most dangerous in the conference.
I think when you looked at Penn State in the offseason, you saw what they lost, and you said, okay, they're going to have some people step up for that production. Talia Walker she's looked really good. I mean, 18 points. I was thinking if that was the 2 games before, but that was their last game, 18 points. Talk a little bit about her game and what she could add to this team.
Career highs, and obviously she's a freshman. It's just her 5th game, but 18 points and 7 rebounds. And there's a 5-player freshman class this year for the Penn State. And Talia Walker right now is getting by far the most playing time of all of them because of the thing she brings to the table. She's, has back-to-back actually double-digit scoring efforts. She set career highs in back-to-back games, but she is a tenacious defender as well. And really, in all this scoring, I mean, Penn State right now, top 15, top 10 of the country almost in scoring points per game. But a lot of it is Carolyn Keeger wants it to come from the defensive end, pressing, going 94 feet on defense. And Talia Walker has been superb. She's been in the right position defensively, which as a freshman is so huge. That's usually one of the biggest parts of the transition from the high school game to the college game. But she's been able to pick up on it very well. Because of that, she's on the floor more often, and she's taking advantage of her offensive opportunities as well. Like I said, this is a very unselfish team when it comes to sharing the basketball, and whoever gets the ball is usually going to be in a pretty good position to score, and it's just a matter of taking advantage of that, cashing it in. Tay Walker has been able to do that as a freshman for the Lady Lions.
We're going to do a segment coming up in the show after you're done, and we're just kind of evaluating the best players on some of these really good teams because, and it's not a knock on anybody, it's just how good these teams are to where like it's hard to identify who the best player is. I'm not going to make you pick favorites here, but the 2 I put up for Penn State are Gracie Merkle and Mariah Murray. It just kind of give the case for both of them and what they've meant to this team early in the season.
Well, Gracie's presence on the inside cannot be overstated. And it's not just her scoring and her rebounding ability underneath. Again, her vision, her ability to kick the ball out as well has been superb. Mariah Murray, obviously, with that quick 3-point shot is dangerous. But like you said, it is tough to really pick out a top player because you also have Jayla Oden at point guard who's distributing. She had a 9.9 assist game 2 games ago. Gabby Elliott, who is also coming back from injury, having been in the Big Ten with Michigan State, has come up very quietly averaging 10 points a game, if you can quietly average double digits. And Allie Campbell back for a 5th year. She's fought through injuries her whole career. She's taking advantage of the opportunity now, helping in a variety of roles, whether it be as a distributor. In fact, probably the thing that Allie might need to do more is just score. But she's so good facilitating in all the other facets of the game that she's been able to make an impact on the game nonetheless. But I think that you definitely look at Gracie Merkle and Mariah Murray's numbers. They definitely stand out here in the early going. But truly, I think if you asked either one of them or any one of the girls on this team, they'd say it's a team effort. Yep. And they're just happy that they've been able to put up back-to-back 100-point games and get to 5-0 this season before the trip down to Orlando this week.
Best player, most impactful, most important. Those are all different answers probably with a team like Penn State. Here's the you can take a look at a sneak peek at what we'll do here in a second. There's the numbers next to each other. They're very even in terms of points per game. Gracie Merkle, 63% from the floor is really, really good. And then defensively, she's been a shot blocker as well. So exactly. Very impressive. Let's talk Georgia Marshall, Joe. What do you expect as you said, the competition going to ramp up a little bit here down in Florida?
Well, it'll start off with Marshall coming up on Thursday down at Disney. Julie Folks now in charge of the Thundering Herd. They're much more of a slow-down team right now, and they play a lot of zone, which helps to that slower pace, trying to stretch out defensive possessions. First time Penn State will really face that in extended action this year, and Aislinn Hayes leads the way for Marshall offensively. But first opponent there out of the Sun Belt, then first opponent out of a major conference this year, Georgia coming out of the SEC. That's going to be a great test for the Lady Lions, see where they really are at. Now, there is some more non-conference action coming up before we start. conference play against the Indiana Hoosiers coming up on December 7th. But really, I think these two games against Marshall and Georgia, we've seen the gaudy numbers that Penn State's been able to put up offensively the first 5 games. I think this will be more of a test on the defensive end for Penn State. We may not necessarily see the triple digits, but as long as they can put up more points than the opponent, Penn State is going to be very happy. Carolyn Keeler's going to be very happy with the results.
It should be a great opportunity for Penn State. Joe, we appreciate you coming on. I'm excited. We're only a couple of weeks away from getting out there to Happy Valley. Should be a great trip. Always enjoy that one, and we'll talk to you then. But thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Austin. We'll try to save some lion s'mores for you at the Creamery.
I hope so. Please save the best for me, and I will make my way over there at some point. Well, that's Joe Putnam joining us here on the show as we continue to transition back into what we're talking about here in this segment. Yeah, we appreciate Joe for coming on here earlier in the day into our show. We always love talking to Joe. I'm hoping to go to the Creamery with him and get a nice ice cream cone. That is one of my favorite places to go across the entire conference is the Creamery there at Penn State. We should talk about this at the top of the show. Forgot to do it before we jumped into that interview. New AP Top 25 poll has come out. Let's take a look. Hold on. If you're watching this live, we're working through some things here. Here we go. Now we're going to get that AP Top 25 on there. USC comes in at number 3, UCLA number 5, so no movement for either of those. Same for Maryland and Ohio State. They stay 11 and 12. Nebraska actually moves down a spot. We're going to talk about Nebraska in a little bit, but they did go 2-0 this week. A tighter game than they would have liked against Southern on Tuesday, and then a blowout win over South Dakota on Saturday. They moved down 1 spot to 21. Illinois up 1 spot to 22, and Oregon up a pair of spots to 23. The first 3 teams out, if you can squint, see that last line there. First 3 teams out of the top 25 are Iowa, Michigan, and Michigan State, all Big Ten teams, all right there knocking on the door. So let's continue on here as we talk about this week that was in the Big Ten. And how about we jump to our player of the week? And this was much tougher than week 1, I think, to figure out the player of the week. One of my criterias with this is going to be, how do you impact important games in the conference? So are you putting up big numbers in meaningful games? And to me, that was Addison O'Grady for Iowa. I'm going to give her the player of the week for her double-double performance on the road at Drake and a nice win for Iowa. This is a game that, even with Caitlin Clark and some of the teams they've had the past few years, this is a game that has given them a lot of trouble in past years. Addison O'Grady goes for 27 points and 10 rebounds as Iowa beats Drake 86-73. We saw with Ohio State going to Belmont. We saw Indiana losing at Butler. It is not easy to play on the road, especially with these types of mid-majors who it is a big deal for them to get to play one of these top-tier teams on their home floor. You see that with Drake getting the opportunity to take on Iowa in-state against a team that everybody in Iowa looks up to, and they gave it everything they had. Drake jumped out to a lead in the first quarter. Iowa grabbed it by double digits by halftime and kind of held on from there. Lucy Olson continues to be a really nice playmaker, facilitator, and scorer. 18.6 assists. Hannah Stolke just looks really good. 16.7 boards, continues to run the floor well. They've got a really nice freshman developing in Tegan Mullaney. 13 points, knocked down another 3-pointers in this one. And the defense for Iowa, I think something that's gone kind of under the radar over the last 4 or 5 years because of what they've done offensively with Caitlin Clark. They held Drake to 28% shooting from the floor. So not only can this team score, they're showing off their defense. They were great against Virginia Tech defensively and a really good performance on the road at Drake defensively. They also beat Toledo earlier in the week, 95-57. They ran away with that one, up 28 points at the half. Stolke also had 17 and 9 in that one. Double figures for Lucy Olson, Addison O'Grady, Sydney Affolter, and Taylor McCabe as Iowa continues to move toward getting into the top 25. They are, again, the first team out of the rankings at number 26. So they win 86-73 over Drake. Our player of the week, Addison O'Grady. Our freshman of the week, Britt Prince of Nebraska. How about 23 points against South Dakota in a dominating win. The Coyotes are certainly not what they have been in past years, but Nebraska went up to the Sanford Pentagon and just dominated them in this game. A really impressive performance, I thought, by Nebraska. 113-70 was the final. Britt Prince goes for 23 points, 4 assists. Natalie Potts, 22-7. Alexis Markowski, 14-5, and then 7 assists as well. But again, they did struggle earlier in the week, last Tuesday against Southern. They only led by 10 at the break in that one, ultimately pulled away, led by a double-double from Natalie Potts. But Nebraska's undefeated. They keep moving forward, but a team that's still trying to figure out who they are. I think that game on Saturday was a really nice, not only for them to win the game by as many as they did, but to see Britt Prince do what she did there, 23 points. She's my freshman of the week. Let's look at some of the honorable mentions for those awards. In my opinion, some great weeks that we should shout out. Kayleen Smeichel averaged over 20 points a game in 2 Maryland wins this week. We talked about Gracie Merkel just a moment ago with Joe Putnam. Gracie, 22 points per game this week and a double-double against Monmouth. Grace Van Sluten, over 16 points and 11 rebounds a game at a pair of Michigan State wins. Mentioned Natalie Potts just a moment ago. She averaged almost 20 points and almost 10 rebounds a game this week. Chance Gray had a program record 9 3-pointers and 31 points in a win over Charlotte for Ohio State. Lauren Betts, who was named officially the Big Ten Player of the Week by the conference, she had a pair of double-doubles in 2 UCLA wins. And Juju Watkins with 2 20-plus point games this week as well. Again, part of my criteria is their meaning, is their importance to the game that you did that in. And UCLA and USC tested early, had some easier games this week. Same with Chance Gray doing that against Charlotte. Gracie Merkel doing it against Monmouth and Niagara. Addison O'Grady doing it on the road against Drake, to me, was the tiebreaker in giving her that award. Some solid freshman performances. Mentioned Britt Prince. How about Jelani Cambridge? We mentioned she had the go-ahead shot on the road to beat Belmont. And Mia Holloway in Michigan, they're going to alter. I think there's going to be a lot of freshmen of the weeks in the Michigan locker room. Mia Holloway was the Big Ten Conference Player Freshman of the Week, averaged 18.5 points a game this week. She has been really good. Olivia Olson was solid this week as well. So they're going to trade that between Silas Swords, Olivia Olson, and Mia Holloway as the season progresses. But that's your freshman of the week. Let's talk about one other score that happened earlier this week that I was able to be at as the Indiana Hoosiers bounced back. Got a really nice win over the 24th-ranked Stanford Cardinal. Man, it just was refreshing to see this Indiana team, the way they played, and they got up and down the floor. It was definitely an emphasis for Indiana to get up and run, and they did that. And Shea Chesky does a really good job of running that point, getting the ball and going with it. So does Chloe Moore McNeil. They both ran the point extremely well in this game. And Indiana made shots. And I've been saying it even after the loss to Butler, to a lot of people have been asking me kind of what's going on. It's just simply once those shots start to fall, I think this team is going to be just fine. They were creating a lot of looks in the Harvard and the Butler losses. And here they are starting to make some shots. They fell early. Sydney Parrish hit one. Chloe Moore McNeil, Yarden Gearzone, Shea Chesky, they all were making threes early. And that kind of led to the explosion. And Indiana got up double figures by halftime. And I believe for all but maybe a minute of the second half, they led by double figures. They did a really good job of not only taking the lead, but holding it and keeping themselves where they needed to be. John Joven in the chat said much better defense and offensive flow. That really is what it was, John. I mean, the flow of the game was so much better. It felt like Indiana, and Terry Moore said after the game, she let her team have more freedom, let her players have more freedom. And I thought it worked really, really well. I mean, it was fun to watch. It was a really, really fun basketball game. If it weren't for that game the same day, Ohio State Belmont, this might have been my game of the week because it just was fun to watch as Indiana kind of got its mojo back. And I think that hopefully we'll carry that into the Atlantis tournament, which is coming up this weekend. We'll talk about it here toward the end of the show, but the Hoosiers will have some opportunities in the Bahamas to continue to get some more big-time wins. A nice one there over Stanford, 79-66. The backcourt, which I mentioned in that game, they were just terrific. Indiana got 21 from Chloe Moore McNeil, 19 from Shea Chesky, 18 from Yarden Gearzone. They combined to make 8 of their 15 three-pointers. Most important part of this game, as John mentioned in the chat, the defense. They held the nation's leading three-point shooting team in Stanford to 2 of 11 from the three-point line. The scout of this game was just perfectly executed for Indiana. They wanted to chase Stanford off the three-point line. They wanted to make life difficult for them out there. They did exactly that, and that's how you take that win for the Hoosiers. All right, time to do our first kind of devoted segment, kind of off of results and preview, and just more of a segment about Big Ten women's basketball. And I'm calling this one, Who is the Best? And I want to preface this by saying we're doing this in the sense of to showcase how many people are having terrific starts to the season of the Big Ten. I'm not doing this to be like, well, this person's not as good as this person. That's not what we're trying to do. But we're going to go through 6 teams in the Big Ten Conference, which is only a third. But we're going to go through them. Some teams that have some really good balance at the top of their conference. We're going to try and decipher who is the best. Who is the person that if you needed to go get a shot, if you needed a moment down the stretch of a game, who are you giving the ball to? And that's kind of what we're doing here in this segment. So we've got some graphics. We'll start with Penn State because we did it with Joe there momentarily. If you were watching, we flashed it up on the screen. We'll talk about it now. Mariah Murray against Grace Merkel, a couple of redshirt sophomores. Mariah Murray has the edge in points, 20.4 to Grace Merkel's 19.6. But Grace Merkel's got a couple of double-doubles, averaging 8.5 rebounds a game, shooting the ball at 63% from the floor, 12 blocks. But then Mariah Murray's real strength is that three-point shot, 47%. She's knocked down, I believe Joe said, 26 threes already this season through the first 5 games. So you're picking hairs if you're trying to pick who's better between those two. It's been fun to see for Penn State, who had a great start to the season last year, ultimately just missed out on the NCAA tournament. But it's great to see for Penn State they've been able to reload like this, and all of a sudden they're ready for a big season this year. So that's I think I would lean in the direction of Grace Merkel just because of the all-around ability, not only to score but to rebound, to defend. But having that three-point shot is going to be so big to free up Grace Merkel on the inside and allow her to have that space to operate, knowing that the defense has to respect the shooting of Mariah Murray and even others on that Penn State team. All right, number 2 is Maryland, a really interesting one for the Terps. Cheyenne Sellers has been the best player on this team, certainly most important player on this team ever since the departure of Diamond Miller a couple seasons ago. She had a lot on her shoulders last year, battled some injuries. This season, I think it's taking a big load off of her to have the additions that they've added. It has bumped her production down a little bit. She's only averaging 10.6 points a game. But in this comparison with Kayleen Smeichel, she's got more rebounds per game, way more assists per game. She's a great facilitator, a solid defender. But Kayleen Smeichel is the scorer, 18.5 points a game, shoots the ball at 53%. How about an early 71% three-point shooter for Kayleen Smeichel? I think it's Smeichel in the sense of who is truly the best of the best. But I think when you start to talk about importance and kind of the engine that makes this team run, it's Cheyenne Sellers and what she can do for this team in so many assets. She's a player that I think if you collected 10 to 12 players around the conference who are a triple-double threat, Cheyenne Sellers is in that running. And she is absolutely kind of the locomotive of this team. But Kayleen Smeichel is such a big addition for Brenda Fries and Maryland to have that downhill scoring ability that maybe they were lacking last season, and someone to really take some of that offensive production load off the shoulders of Cheyenne Sellers, free her up to be more of a facilitator, more of a defender, and then she can add in where she can. And Kayleen Smeichel has been terrific so far this season. Michigan State's a team that through a couple weeks here we have not talked much about. Looking at their profile so far this season, they sit at 5-0. They're coming off a win on Sunday over Western Michigan on the road, 79-42. Taking care of business, especially away from home, is very good. They clobbered Eastern Kentucky last Thursday, 96-54, in a game they only led by 4 at halftime, won the second half 57-19. The 2 players on the screen right now, if you're watching us, are Grace Van Sluten and Julia Aralt, who both had double-doubles in the win at Western Michigan on Sunday. Grace Van Sluten leads in all the categories. If you're watching us, you can see that. Points per game, rebounds, assists, that assists and rebounds go to Julia. That graphic is not correct. But Grace Van Sluten does lead in points per game. Julia Ayrault leads in the other ones. Rebounds, she's got 7 to Grace's 3.8. Assists belong to Julia Ayrault as well. And actually, I'm not even sure that entire graphic is correct. We're going to get an updated on that one, and we're going to move to the next one. We'll come back to Michigan State. Michigan, Jordan Hobbs versus Silas Swords is the conversation I want to have. And by the end of the year, we could be having a conversation about Olivia Olson and Mia Holloway in this same vein as well. But Silas Swords has gotten off to such a good start this season. She is scoring it at over 18 a game, over 8 rebounds a game, 3.5 assists. She's shooting at 48% from the floor. Jordan Hobbs is kind of the veteran of this team. They don't have a ton back from last year. And to see what she's been able to do as more has been thrust onto her shoulders has been fun to watch. And it's kind of a Cheyenne Sellers, Kayleen Smichael situation where I think that Silas Swords is the best pure basketball player that Michigan has on its roster. But I think that there's something to be said about Jordan Hobbs and her leadership. At 3-point shooting is going to be a big skill for her, 43% so far this season. So I think that, again, like Kayleen Smichael with Maryland, I think Silas Swords is the best basketball player on this team. But I do think that but Jordan Hobbs probably has the most impact and the VIP of this Michigan team, so to say. All right, the Michigan State stats are wrong. I'm going to read them out to you. If you're listening, you're not even watching, you don't even see it, so it's fine. Van Sluten's averaging 16.8 points per game, 9 rebounds per game, about 3 assists a contest, and she's shooting the ball at 62%. So that whole right side of the graphic is wrong. Julia Ayrault at 13.6 points per game, 7 rebounds. She's averaging 2.8 assists per game. And then she's shooting the ball at 54%. This is one where I think I could go either way on it. Grace Van Sluten has been a wonderful addition to Michigan State. And I think it is similar. Julia Ayrault's in a similar position to Cheyenne Sellers, where because of this addition of Van Sluten, it allows Ayrault to slide into the 4 position instead of the 5, which she was thrust into playing last season. And it takes a little bit of the load and the pressure off of Julia Ayrault. And so that's kind of the process of this game that we're playing is showing like how when you have these 2 star players, it can really take pressure off of each other and allow them to play off of each other very well, which I think Ayrault and Van Sluten are doing here so far. Michigan State will take on Detroit Mercy this week. Still a pretty slow start to the year in terms of their schedule. Looking forward to seeing them start to ramp it up. A lot of people excited about what they can do in year 2 for Robin Fralick. All right, Illinois. Let's put 3 people on the board here. Makira Cook, Kendall Bostic, and the emerging Adalia McKenzie, who has been fantastic this season. It doesn't take into account Genesis Bryant, who has not gotten off to a great start this year, but certainly is one of Illinois' top players. But I mean, Kendall Bostic, I think, is my answer here in terms of probably the most important player. I have always thought she's extremely underrated in the Big Ten Conference. She's averaging a double-double again. She's shooting the ball at 65% from the floor. She's very good defensively despite being undersized at her position. And it always helps that she's got guards who can shoot around her. Adalia McKenzie shooting 61% from the floor, averaging 14 points, 5 boards, almost 3 assists. Makira Cook, like Genesis Bryant, her numbers are down, but I still think at her peak, she might be the best player on this team. But I think right now, the conversation based on these numbers is Bostic and McKenzie. And I just have always, in my time in this job doing Illinois games, I have a lot of respect for Kendall Bostic's game. Love watching her play. She's become one of my favorites in the conference. So I always lean in her direction. But even look at the grade levels there. Makira Cook, graduate. Bostic, graduate. McKenzie, senior. And you throw in Genesis Bryant, graduate as well. And there's a lot of veteran leadership on this Illinois team. Now, they do have Gretchen Dolan playing some really good basketball right now. She put up 15 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists against Lemoyne yesterday. And then Jasmine Brown-Hager's been playing well, 23 points off the bench in a win over Eastern Illinois. So they've got a lot of talent there as well. All right, last one is Ohio State, and this one is extremely interesting. I think the most interesting of these. Cody McMahon, Chance Gray, and Jamani Cambridge. Who is the best player on Ohio State. And again, the exercise here just shows the amount of tools in the tool shed that Kevin McGuff has to work with here for Ohio State. Cody McMahon, I think all around coming into the season, the most talented, one of the most talented of the conference. 16 points, about 3 rebounds, and she's added a 3-point shot to her game this year consistently at 46%. Chance Gray's been a wonderful addition for Ohio State. 17 points, about 51% from the floor, 52% from three. She had that 9 3-point performance against Charlotte. And then Jamani Cambridge, who I think the answer here in terms of raw Big Ten talent, she's the best, probably the best freshman of the conference and one of the best overall players. 16 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 53% from the floor, and 40% from three. And we kind of got our answer as they went to Jelani Cambridge, who I realized I spelled her name wrong on there. Apologies. That we got the answer there that we were kind of looking for with whether or not Ohio State, who they would go to down the stretch, and they went to Jelani Cambridge. So impressive stuff from her and in that Belmont game. And I hope that was just kind of fun to look at how many good players there are in this Big Ten Conference. All right, let's talk about what's coming up in week 3. The game to watch to me, and this was tough because there's a ton of good ones. Number 1, South Carolina travels to Pauley Pavilion to take on number 5, UCLA, Sunday, 4 o'clock on FS1. Very excited to see this one. UCLA got tested early by Louisville, but I thought really controlled that game in Paris. And this is going to be a really good test for UCLA to see what they are made of. Lauren Betts playing some great ball right now. Janiah Barker shooting the ball lights out. Can they get Kiki Rice back? That's the question right now for UCLA and get her into the swing of things. But it's very interesting to look at this game and see what we have in store for us. I dove into some of the numbers here. Both teams obviously scoring the ball well, but neither of these teams great with the three this year. South Carolina 33%, UCLA 31%. Where are some of the advantages? Well, UCLA has been a little bit more efficient offensively than South Carolina with their effective field goal percentages. And UCLA is shooting a better and South Carolina's advantage is their defense. They have held opponent shooting percentages UCLA's are better. Their opponent shooting percentages are better than South Carolina. So it's going to be interesting. Can UCLA's defense hold South Carolina down? Can South Carolina keep Lauren Betts off the glass? Both teams are top-tier rebounders. I thought early in the game, South Carolina struggled with rebounding against Michigan. They were much better against NC State. I would imagine they're going to be ready to go in this one. But an awesome game. I think the advantage, it's hard to tell. I'd give it to UCLA because it's a cross-country trip for South Carolina, but should be a ton of fun to watch that one. Same with this one. How about number 6 Notre Dame at number 3 USC, Saturday at 4 o'clock on NBC. Going to have a screen on here as you watch some football Saturday. Both teams are averaging over 90 points a game. But the big advantage for Notre Dame right now, there's a couple of them actually. Number 1 is 3-point shooting. They're shooting the ball at 39% from 3, while USC just 29%. Notre Dame is second in the country in defensive rebounding per game at 36 a contest. USC is outside the top 100 at 26 defensive rebounds a game. They have struggled giving up a lot of offensive rebounds. Notre Dame could have an opportunity there to crash the glass. But most importantly, can they keep USC off the offensive glass? Because that is where, like, Kiki Iriafen really thrives, is getting those offensive rebounds. Both teams are great defensively, have held their opponents under 31% shooting. Despite that, though, I still think it's going to be a shootout. Should be a ton of fun to watch that one in Los Angeles. Kansas at Iowa, sneaky good one tomorrow at 7 o'clock on the Big Ten Network. This one is definitely worth watching. Some numbers in this one that I think favor – What's interesting, this is a total contrast of styles. I know I talked earlier in the show about Iowa being better defensively, but Iowa is scoring more efficiently, and they work a lot quicker than Kansas does offensively. Kansas is more of a low possession play, grinded out defense. They're allowing about 10 fewer points per game than Iowa is. They're also 19th, or they're holding opponents to 20% from 3, which is 16th in the country. And Iowa is not shooting the 3 well right now at just under 30%. They're outside the top 200 in the country in 3-point shooting. And that's one of Kansas's strengths defensively is the 3-point shot. Iowa is giving up a ton of 3-pointers this year. Almost 45% of shots given up this year by Iowa defensively are from beyond the arc. That's 358th nationally. Kansas is 19th in the country in three-point percentage at 41%. So some of Kansas's strengths go against Iowa's weaknesses, but then Iowa's strength is just scoring the ball in general, and Kansas's strength is defending the ball. Iowa shares the ball better. They take care of the ball better. They don't turn the ball over as much as Kansas does, so that could be an opportunity for Iowa to get the advantage. And, of course, they will have the home crowd at their back, which is always an advantage at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Last game really to highlight here individually is Nebraska at Creighton Friday at 5 o'clock. I think this one heavily favors Nebraska by the numbers. Nebraska is averaging over 90 points a game. Creighton just 78 outside the top 300 of that category. Nebraska leads the country in field goal percentage. They're third in three-point percentage and fifth in two-point percentage, while Creighton is outside the top 300 in both opponent field goal percentage and opponent two-point percentage, and not great at opponent three-point percentage either. So the strength of Nebraska, which has been shooting the basketball this year, is the weakness of Creighton, which is their defense. And so I think that's going to be a huge opportunity for Nebraska to get some shots to fall. Nebraska gets to the free throw line a ton more than Creighton as well, so that could be another advantage with Markowski down low. So despite this being in Creighton, the numbers certainly favor Nebraska in this one. Let's take a look at the battle for Atlantis Field. Before we go, I mentioned I'll be down there with the Hoosiers as they take on Columbia. You circle a couple of these teams in there like Baylor, North Carolina, both teams in the top 25. Texas A&M's had some good years. Villanova's been solid the past few seasons. And Columbia, a team that was in the NCAA tournament last year, picked to finish second in the Ivy League. They've won the regular season a couple times here recently. So Indiana will get a tough test here early, and a staggering among the favorites they would expect to see if they keep winning. Baylor and North Carolina would be some opportunities for Indiana to potentially get some marquee wins under their belt. Excited to see the battle for Atlantis unfold. That is Saturday, Sunday, and Monday down in the Bahamas. Well, that is the slate of games that we wanted to highlight. Some other games that are probably worth keeping an eye on as you go through the week. See if I can find. You've got some good games. We highlighted most of them that I would have pointed out. Penn State, we mentioned, is going on the trip to Orlando. They're going to take on Marshall on Thursday and Georgia on Saturday. Rutgers is at Virginia Tech tonight. That's a sneaky good one to see this undefeated Rutgers team against a Power 5 test. They'll also get Princeton at home on Sunday. We know Princeton has been very solid here the past few seasons, so that'll be good. And Washington heads on the road. They're going to take on the Bahamas Pink Flamingo Baha Mar event. They've got LSU next Monday, the 7th-ranked Tigers on task. They've also got games Thursday and Friday against Cal State Fullerton and Prairie View A&M before heading out to the Bahamas. So Washington, who is coming off a loss earlier on Sunday to Montana, their first of the season, see how they bounce back, and they will certainly be tested against LSU in the Bahamas. So some good games certainly that are coming up this week in the Big Ten Conference. We will be back, as we always are, at noon here on the Back Home Network YouTube channel. For those of you who have followed along live, thanks for joining us. Hit the subscribe, the follow buttons on the YouTube and the podcast channels. Let us know how we're doing. Tell a friend about our product. It's been a ton of fun. If you miss our episodes live, you can always catch us in podcast form on both Apple and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter at DribbleDriveWBB for all the latest news and notes as we go through each week and the fun things going on in the Big Ten Conference. Well, thanks for joining us here on this Tuesday live on the YouTube channel or in podcast form. We appreciate it. In LA, all over the country. We're excited to watch them. We'll bring another episode next Tuesday. Till then, I'm Austin Render saying so long from the Dribble Drive.